Guys, well, we might get started.
Okay.
I'll do some housekeeping first. Unless Stanton, do you have anything to add? You're just going to hang out with us?
Mate, trust me, people are here to listen to you. Do you think they're here? I'm only here for eye candy. I'm just here as eye candy.
You always do the intro for my talks. Are you not going to do an intro today?
But I'm on day 10, Craig, of fasting mimicking. So just 500 calories for the last 10 days. So I'm on fire.
All right. Whatever works for you, brother. That's
it.
Good, man. That's cool. So what I was going to say is, for anyone, I'll tell you the overview. I'll give the overview. And then basically, I've prepared a slideshow. But what's most important for me is to be here and especially answer some questions. And so if you guys, in terms of the chat box, at any time, if you want to stop it, if we go a little bit one way or the other, I'm really fine with that. But I'll give you the overview first of all. So what I'm going to share with you is what I'm seeing with people from what I call the 4 foundations, from a mindset perspective, from a lifestyle, from a nutrition and a movement that may not be, they're coming to see me for some support. So I'm going to talk about some of the issues that I'm seeing at the moment. And then what I'm working a lot with people is about changing the habits. And in terms of habits, like how we can actually go through a process. So I'm going to go through a process, 5-step process that can hopefully help you and to say, okay, this is what I want to change. And here are the steps that I'm missing, or this is what I need to add. And then I'm also going to talk about the immune system. I'm going to talk about what I'm doing, what I've been very fortunate, especially working here and who I know with a lot of the doctors and good functional medicine doctors here, what's working for them, working with people and what they're recommending. So I'm going to share that part of it too. So there's 3 things: give an overview, talk about habits, which is everything for health. Habits run health. So if we can have those good habits, and then we're going to talk about some supplements or things that you want to consider, if you're not already, to give you the strongest immune system possible. So what I'll do is I'm going to start with a screen share. And let's see if this comes up. All right. So I call it Thriving in Corona Times. Can you guys all see that?
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Now let's just hope my clicker works. Come on. Okay. So this is my kind of model, my assessment. When I'm working with a person, I first want to get an understanding about how close they are to living their life, how they want it, in terms of, for them, really thriving. So we call the title like Thriving in These Times. And so I use the bullseye analogy. This actually comes from some of the work that I've done in ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. And the starting point is, again, let's find out where you're at and then where you want to be. And just see, okay, wait, Craig, can you also touch on why and how gut health is so important? Yeah, yep, absolutely, Jennifer. So as we go on at the end, I'll definitely talk about gut health and why that for me is a massive part. Can you see the whole screen, the whole slideshow? Or is there the boxes of people on the right, or is that just me?
That's just you.
Okay, cool. Just to make sure. So mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, and movement. And these are some of the questions that I'm asking clients at the moment. I'm asking them, where do you want to be, like in terms of purpose? And we'll get into that in a moment. I'm asking how their mindset, when they wake up in the morning, how do you feel? Is it where you want to be? Is it low, like I'm really struggling, or I'm nearly hitting target? I'm waking up feeling motivated. I've got purpose. I'm ready to go for the day. In terms of goal orientation, we know the importance of setting some goals, putting it in perspective. And so are you actually going out and realizing, okay, this is what I want to achieve in this time? And are you doing stuff in terms of mental training? You've had Mel's been on and talking about meditation, mindfulness, time for yourself, time for your mind. So are you doing those things? Now I put these up, it's not about doing them all. It's, again, these are some of the components of the mindset. While the lifestyle, if I give an overview, is asking yourself, how are your relationships right now? Thailand, for instance, are talking about a lot of the issues that are happening, people at home, and we looked at, there was alcohol a lot for a moment, and there wasn't alcohol, and there was a lot of relationship issues. And I know around the world, that's one of the biggest struggles, putting everybody together, and it might even just be family. I know 2 kids and mother and everybody together, like it's different. So how is that where you want it to be? What about the balance? There's actually some interesting studies about people working even more, thinking about the work more, and actually focusing a lot more. That's because of this crisis and the fear of losing work. So they're spending a lot more time on the computer. So asking yourself, hey, how's my balance going? The rest, recovery, the sleep. I've got quite a few clients who, because of the setup during the day, they're really struggling at sleeping at night and maybe doing things that they didn't do before. So it's, again, testing out that. Self-growth, using the time to say, okay, I might have some possibilities now. What am I working on myself? Movement. Are you doing something every single day? One of the things I'll just share is I have a sheet that I mark off every time. Like I have every day I do, for instance, a certain amount of push-ups. I do a certain amount of what I call crawls. I do a certain amount of squats. And I'm ticking them off to say, hey, am I getting enough movement? Especially when we're in a tighter lockdown. Sport, recreation, obviously that is a big problem at the moment for a lot of people. This is like in terms of a training plan. So when it comes, a lot of people may not have a training plan, but do you have to know you're progressing, and are you tracking anything? Again, you might not be doing it. You might just say, I'm not training so much at the moment. I'm not moving, I should say. I'm not moving my body so much. Maybe that's what I need to focus on. How can I make it happen? How can I make this habit? And that's why we're going to talk about habits. Nutrition has this stress, has all the things that have happened in the last month or 2 months. Has that affected your relationship with food? It's a really interesting, I've got a client who, she basically, I saw her while she was here, and she was from China. She moved back to China, and she's just been overwhelmed, and she notices that she is just eating throughout the night, basically. And she's taken on this, and when we worked it out, she kept trying to force herself, how am I going to stop eating at night? I'm going to like put these barriers in place. But what was successful was the fact that we looked at the triggers. And part of the problem was that kids were at home, unusual. Her husband was at home, unusual. And she was being worked up. And because of her stress, and cortisol drives the blood sugar up, she was finding herself, it's 10 o'clock and I just need sweets. I need these foods. I need this comfort. And so we weren't working on the food. We were working on the setup together. So mindful eating, is it something that a lot of people may just be glued to the screen? Are you having times out? So those sort of questions, asking yourself. In terms of a design, this whole word diet, a diet is just a style of eating. Are you in control of that style of eating? Meaning, oh, my diet is a whole foods mostly diet. My diet looks like this. Am I following that? Am I comfortable with that? So again, asking yourself that question. And that might mean tracking. I've got a client that I'm working with who's had massive gut problems. And we're going to talk a bit about the gut and the role with the immune system. But for her tracking was every morning, actually for a while, she would send me, because we were doing elimination style diet, and when she was reintroducing foods, she'd send me a photo of the food and she'd write down, okay, or she'd put in the WhatsApp, this is what's going on. And we were basically saying, okay, let's find the relationships. What's triggering you? What's causing your problems for your gut? Because she was walking around saying, I feel like I'm 7 months, whatever, 8 months pregnant. After a meal, I just feel like I'm eating a beach ball. So this opening is really the question of how are you shooting at the moment? And you might make a mental note and say, well, that's actually all right. And I'm doing well here, but it's this area. This is what I really want to focus on right now. And so when we take that into context about it's a habit. So we are the collection of our rituals, of our habits. And in terms of our success, we see that. I see that every day. I see a healthy person. They're doing it every day. they're moving their body, they're eating. And so how can we put in place in these times when the world's kind of shifted these habits? And maybe because they're different, we have to put them in different ways now. Any of you guys have any points or any questions or anything about these 4 foundations? All right. If not, I'm going to, if you want to put it again, putting anything in the chat box, I'm going to dive in and, oh, no, that's not working. Let's try this.
Hi, Craig. It's Jane here. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm well, and you?
Yeah, I'm okay, thank you. I have a question. It might be useful for everyone, but I'll throw it out there, and you can either answer it now or while you're talking. But my bad habit that I have, that I know I relate it to, is when I'm doing quite deep thinking document work. If I don't do that first thing in the morning and I do it in the afternoon or push it into the evening because I've got deadlines, I will associate trying to do that work with then just treating myself to biscuits or whatever. It's really excessive. I know people will go, oh, it's fine, and I'm like, I do it with oat biscuits and things like that, but I know it's a really bad habit and I do it excessively. But it kind of resonated with what you were saying.
I'm actually seeing that a lot. It's very common now, and that's why a lot of people are saying, yeah, but it's fine. Like, yeah. And it's nice when they say, hey, Jane, it's all right. Look, it's normal. And I see it a lot. The question is, does that align with who you want to be? So if a person says, I accept that for themselves, I'm like, great. If you're okay with it and you're accepting whatever that behavior is, whether it's drinking at a certain time, that's fine. The problem comes in when you say to yourself, no, that's not a habit I want. I don't feel good about myself. I don't feel that aligns. This is in terms of the next slide, what I'm going to talk about. That doesn't align with who I am. And maybe, Jane, when I go through, especially the first part and these habits, that there might be, hopefully, the take homes. But if not, let's continue this. But one, yes, I'm seeing it a lot. But that doesn't mean we always say normal. When I look at blood tests, we have normal ranges. But then there's optimal. And so the question is, do you want to be in the normal or do you want to be in the optimal? And if you're saying, do you know what, this doesn't work for me right now, this isn't how I'm living, now I need to change certain parts. And just a couple of things, like we'll go through some of the habits that hopefully will help you try some things. Because for me, what I often do the analogy, when it comes to strategies and all the things that I might say, think of hats. Now, I did this one video where I had all the hats in our house, and we've got so many hats in our house, all the beach and everything. And I said, I might throw a possibility at you, Jane. And you might say, okay, well, that's interesting. And you try the hat on. And if you go, nah, doesn't work, then you try another one. Then you try another one. So this is this whole thing. There is no one size fits all plan of anything. But the key is to go, I think that resonates with me. That makes sense. And now I'm going to try something. I will say the thing you want to look at for any of these habits is, what is the setup? What happened prior? Now, you've said, I know exactly what happened prior. It's like this workload and this schedule and all these parts. Then the question is, okay, what can I do with it? So for instance, I'll give you an example. The lady that I'm working with, and she's actually a psychologist. And she was a bit embarrassed. She's like, I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm working with you on my psychology and my food relationship. And I'm like, that's normal. Imagine there's a mountain. I'm climbing my mountain. You're climbing your mountain. I can see from my mountain, though, some things that can help you that you might not be able to see. It's just a different perspective. And for her, we basically wrote down, and actually it's a great thing for Phil. Many of you know Phil, Phuket Cleanse. He actually got me, he was on his mountain looking at my mountain. I said, I think I'm procrastinating a bit too much. I think I'm not being as efficient as I'd like to be. And he said, hey, Craig, do this for a while. Put every 15 minutes what you've done. But what I've had to do is also then say, okay, I'm being really productive, but where are my times where I need to just calm down? Because stress runs the show. Stress will raise your blood sugar. That'll make you want to eat. Stress will send you places that you go, oh, I just need that to calm the system down. So you really want to look and say, okay, how can I do the work, but remain in a place that my nervous system doesn't feel like it's being threatened? Because when it feels threatened, it's going to want the sweet stuff. And you can try all the diets. So if I have a person who's trying to even lose weight or something, it's like, you can try any diet possible. You might get a short-term result, but it's going to be a problem if the setup is not working for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you.
That's so what I'm gonna go through some strategies now. So this is kind of my first little approach to it. And maybe there's parts there, Jane, and for everyone that you look and say, okay, this is out of that overview, the bullseye. I really want to work on this part. This, I don't feel like I'm really close to the bullseye there, or where the person I want to be. So how am I going to put in place the strategy or these steps to see that I can now create a new habit? All right, so what I'll do, I'll just get back to this. Let's see if this works. Okay, if this works. All right, let me see. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you to, this is what I do with a lot of clients. I'm going through my head to see, are you doing that step? Do you know that step? And the 5 steps I call, number 1 is being clear. The clearer you are about where you want to be and what the habit serves, the easier it is. Then we're going to talk about overcoming some obstacles. And for me, a big obstacle is time. Feeling just, when we feel overwhelmed, and I know even myself, when I felt like, oh, I've just released a website, I've just done this, and I'm like, oh my God, and I find myself procrastinating. I'm like, I've got so much to do, and yet why did I just get hooked in to this crazy video on Instagram when I had to do a post, and I got hooked in, and now half an hour later and I'm still watching these little videos. Like, why is that? And it's often because we're just overwhelmed. Having the setup, and I'm going to introduce some of you, if you see me talk and about habits, you might be familiar with I'm a big fan of a guy called BJ Fogg from Stanford University, who's very big on, he's a behavioral scientist, and about how to actually make long-term changes. He's done one of the biggest collectives of people changing. And I'll give you a link to where he, like his site, using rewards and punishments and accountability. So they're the 5 things I'm going to talk about. Again, if you guys want to stop me at any time, go for it, or I'll just keep running through, and then I'll come back and talk about a few other things. But let's have a look. For me, it's always asking the question about, okay, where am I going? So this is meaning. Even at the moment, I was reading a study just recently because I was quite affected. I read a study that they predict in Australians, that more people will die of suicide than the coronavirus. And because of what's happened to them financially or relationship or any of those sort of things. And then I kind of went into a rabbit hole looking, and especially with my work with acceptance commitment therapy, I looked at the studies that were connecting meaning and purpose and suicide. And it's quite incredible, the differences when a person, and they're using a lot of questionnaires, but they're working with people who are depressed, and seeing those who have meaning and purpose, the likelihood of them going into depression, and it makes sense, but especially suicide is, like, it's very high, lacking the meaning and purpose. And so the question that I have for all the people that I work with is, where are we going? Who are you, and who do you want to be? And how close to the bullseye are you living that right now? So it's not just an idea, but how close are you living that? So a person might say, hey, Craig, well, let's start with you. What brings you purpose? And I'll say, in terms of, for me, being a role model for my children, for clients, I want to live that way. That drives me, how I eat, how I move, how I wake up in the morning. It just drives me. My kids have never seen me drunk, and I hope they never will see me drunk. And these sort of things, I'm like, no, that's really important to me. So what drives you? What makes you so passionate about? And so these are called your values, what you stand for. Because and I'm going to introduce you to what's called the choice point. This comes from the acceptance commitment model, and it's really effective. It's very simple, but it's very effective in helping a person ask themselves the question every day, am I living towards the person that I want to be, what I stand for, my values? So I'm asking myself the question, hey, Craig, are you being a role model? How you deal with other people or your children or your family? Are you being a role model? And then on the days I'm like, oh, that wasn't, am I leading away? So the more clear I am about my meaning, my purpose, and my values, the easier it is that I can switch back and align with them. So every day, this choice point, every day we get situations, we have thoughts, and we have feelings that can hook us and take us away from who we want to be. So you might say, I want to be a role model, but say we have a bad day, say I have a bad day, I might get hooked into talking to my kids or talking to my wife in a way that I didn't want to because of this action. Now, the whole idea is to be using techniques to unhook us. And this is where mindfulness and I call it like dropping an anchor, really kind of connecting again, taking a moment to connect, ground myself and connect and say, okay, Craig, who do you want to be? But first, that clarity. Where am I going? Who's the person I want to be? And what are the actions that I need to do to lead me towards that person? And if we can hold that, and a person might say, I want to be super fit, super healthy. I want to be energetic. I want to be fun. And then at every moment they can ask themselves during that, am I being that person? So it starts with clarity. And I recommend clients always make a list of some of your values, but make even a mission statement. This is the person that I want to be. And this is the person, especially at these times, I want to be the person. So for me, right now in these Corona times, I want to be the rock for my family. I want to be as stable. I want to not take on all the fear from other outsides. I want to be the rock so they can come to. And so that's the person I want to be. Now, am I living that every day? I wish, but I'm trying. But at least it keeps me in that direction to say, okay, that's the person I want to be. So maybe saying during these times even, am I being that person? So that's the first part. I could talk about this definitely all day, but let's talk about overcoming obstacles. Now, I said that time was one of the biggest obstacles, but not only time, it's the quality of the time. It's how we're spending it on things maybe we don't want to be spending it. So a lot of people say, Craig, like, I know I want to have the habit of exercise and preparing my meals and just time to mindfully eat and give myself the time for that. But I'm just overwhelmed. I've got 2 kids. I've got my business online. I've got all these things. I've got to organize this, this, and this, and they're coming up. And my first reaction is, okay, let's see if we can go through this list and let's prioritize it. And let's see if we can find some of that time so we can even put in some of the little habits that we can get the balls rolling. So some of the aspects I'll talk about is, are there things in your life that you can automate? I used to, crazy, go into the bank and do so much in the bank. Now, most of you probably are far more advanced than me and everything's on the phone, but I finally switched in the last 3 months to online banking. But what about other parts? Is there certain things that you can automate there? In terms of delegating, is there things to be done that you can actually work and say, could you do this part here? Do we need to take everything on ourselves? Eliminate. Now, this is a big one because it might actually mean people. These 2, I'll bring up the next one. Eliminate and reduce. If you're in relationships and say they are not, they're taking you away from that bullseye. They're creating a lot of stress. The question is, how can we address this? Now, for some people, it is reducing, especially obviously with this lockdown, that might have taken away, but it might have also, in terms of communications with people in different avenues. So do I need to reduce the time with certain people? Do I need to eliminate things? So I've had many clients who just say, like time-wise, sleep-wise, they're glued to the Netflix or the screen. And the question is, okay, how's that serving you? Now, there's nothing wrong with a bit of time. And like I said, I've got hooked on posting because I post on Instagram, and then I've been like, oh, Craig, you've got to watch out for that. I've got to maybe eliminate some people that I follow because I just, for my own sake. So the key for me is often about time. creating habits. So if you're going to add new habits, unless you've got already a gap with time and you're going to slot them in, oftentimes you're going to have to take some things away, or at least reorganize. And it might be some of the things, it might not be such a time thing, it might be energy. If you feel you're drained, it's questioning, okay, is that the right person? At the end, I'm going to talk accountability, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But for me, this is a really interesting exercise. We often think about the to-do list, and we have all these to-dos and post-its with, I've got to do this and got to do this. Sometimes we need a not to-do list. I'm not going to do that. It's too much. I'm taking on too much. Because when we feel, like I said, oftentimes I was even listening to somebody the other day, and the more work that gets put onto us, oftentimes the more procrastination, because we just get so overwhelmed. And what happens is, if we can push away a few things, or at least say, no, I need to put that away, or delegate, or just put that for now, then I feel like I can get back into it. So have a think about those ones there. The setup. So we got maybe a habit that we want to bring in and introduce. First question I'll have to a client is, okay, is it realistic? How confident? So I saw a gentleman yesterday, and he's 130 kilos. His ideal is less than 90. And I looked at his whole schedule, and one of the biggest problems is his drinking. And his drinking, especially in the last 2 months, has really gone high. Now, I'd love to say, hey, and I'd love him to say, I'm going to stop the alcohol. But we talked about it, and it was very clear that he felt that right now that was there, and I'm not going to judge that. I'm like, okay, the question is, okay, how can we then break things down? How can we, like I said, reduce it? So you have a goal. Can we reduce in terms of the alcohol this way? We have a goal that, for instance, walking. Instead of, he had grand ideas that how much exercise, he wanted to go up and down Big Buddha every morning. And I said, really? Do you really, like, you're setting yourself up, most of you see guys have been Big Buddha. It's like, really, every day? Like, can we not break it down? And then we can work from success. So we've got to sometimes watch out that we put it too high. And what BJ Fogg, who I'm going to introduce, he runs a site called Tiny Habits. He has a graph that shows, obviously, to achieve, like in terms of the achievement, high degree of like challenge or something very difficult. Let's say the task is very difficult. If it's too high, obviously you're not going to step into it. If it's too low, you won't do it. So you've got to find that balance. But also you've got to see that it's ease. So when I recommend with a client and I say, okay, let's break this down, I'll say a scale from 0, totally easy, to 10, my God, that's overwhelming. Can we get like a 7? So let's not make it that, like for him, the Big Buddha, he was motivated. He's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make 20 days of this. And I said, well, how about we just make a minimum? If you do it, great. But we've got to see that we keep having success. Success for me is really important, because there's nothing worse than you saying, oh, you're a fraud. You say to yourself, do you know what? You did it again. You made a promise, you made a commitment, and you broke it again. The more we do that, the more it hurts. So like I said, you might need to break that habit down. So if you looked at that bullseye and you said, I really want to focus on this, do you need to break it down? Now the anchor, this is an interesting thing, because you might just think, all right, I'm going to take on a new habit. I'm going to walk every day. And then you think, all right, well, how am I going to remind myself this? You might have a post-it, or you might just say, okay, I'm just going to do it. But what BJ Fogg recommended, and many of the behavioral scientists also agree with, is that when you have an anchor, an existing habit, it is much easier if you lock it to that than just hoping for the best. So what it might mean, for instance, in my house, if you've heard me talk, I'll often say, wake, water, and walk. Every morning, I wake up, and this is my electrolyte drink, but I drink water. Everywhere I go, pretty much, I'm always, if you see, always there's water like within a foot or 2 feet of me. But I wake up, I drink water, and then soon afterwards, we're going to go for a walk. And so if the ritual which I cannot remember not having a drink within 20 minutes of waking, but something feels wrong. Something feels like, something's missing. What's missing? I'm meant to be doing something. And that's where we want to get, where it just feels uncomfortable. There's got to be something I do. And then you go, oh, I haven't drunk my water yet. I haven't been for my walk in the morning. And so by locking it in, so here's the setup. We connect it to the new activity. After I, ... I will. After I wake up in the morning, I drink water. I drink a tea. After I have my lunch, I'm going to do my meditation. Or after I go to the toilet, I'm going to do push-ups. And I've got on my phone, my timer rings, I'm going to do some exercise, whether it's push-ups or something like that. So I know there's a trigger in there. And it could be obviously putting things in your phone, but habits, it's repetition. Repetition is the mother of skill. And once it gets locked into this existing anchor, which could be waking up, brushing your hair, going to the toilet, having a meal at certain times, once you have locked it into that, it has a greater chance of obviously there's something else I have to do, that feeling. So let's talk rewards and punishments. I was really lucky, and if anyone's interested, I'll put a link or somewhere where the conversation I had with Martin, my friend, Dr. Martin Indabitson. He was at Phuket Cleanse over Christmas and did some great talks. He's a neuroscientist who had cancer, pancreatic cancer. He had it in 2012. So over 8 years, the chances of survival are within 5 years, 7%. And he's thriving. And a lot of the questions we did a talk on overcoming obstacles and creating new habits. Because for me, I'm constantly having conversations about habits, and especially with someone who's a neuroscientist who has good habits. And one of the things that we spoke about that he said is really important for changing your behaviors, for creating new habits, is using emotion. And he said emotion is a driver for learning. Now, it could be a reward or it could be a punishment. And we talked in the video, and I'm sure Tommy, some of you may know Tommy, who's at Phuket Cleanse. I remember one day he's walking along and we're talking about something, and then he jumps in the air and he clicks his feet together, like Charlie Chaplin sort of thing. And I was like, and then I looked at him and I knew, because Martin was here, I said, you just did something good. You just rewarded yourself, didn't he? He's laughing and he's like, yeah, I'm using from Martin the technique that when I do something, I tell myself, hey, well done. Now, we often get into these traps of like using food or using some external, well done, I'm going to eat something. But he was very big. It might have been yes, or it might have been something that gets you, like I said, in terms of an acknowledgement, because we got big on that as a reward, and using a little bit of emotion in there, because the body loves that. Like a little, in terms of the dog, like it loves that little reward. So on the flip side, he said also just as powerful is the punishment, is the idea, oh, if I do if this happens, might have been in terms of fear, like, or an experience, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to be in that place. So when it comes to your habits, you might think of, is there a reward? How do I reward myself? How do I acknowledge myself? Well done on that. But you might even use the punishment. It comes a story. I think this one actually comes from Anthony Robbins, where he talked about 3 ladies who wanted to lose weight. And they made a pact. And they said, if we don't do this, and something I think is crazy, but if we don't achieve this, or if any of us don't, the person must eat a tin of dog food. And it talked about that they succeeded. It was that the idea of that was so bad. Now, again, that's extreme, but it's emotion. It's, oh my God, if that happens, that would just be the most awful thing. So if you can use that emotion in a way, that can really obviously makes that sustainability. Now, accountability. When it comes to, so the biggest accountability is from yourself, and to say to say, I'm making a commitment and I'm going to follow through. But they're also, and I'm a big fan of having a support network. And it's great that obviously you guys have come on today and Phuket Cleanse have put on these talks to keep this group, community. But what I often do with clients, and I talk about, especially having worked at Phuket Cleanse, worked in Thailand, where people have come over, they've been surrounded by like-minded people, amazing people, motivated people. And then they go home, and when they're leaving, they're like, yeah, I'm so pumped. I'm going to change this part of my life. I'm going to really work on this part of my health and well-being. And they go home and something happens. And sometimes that something is the people around them don't share their same values. So they might go home and say, I stand for being super healthy now. I'm really going to focus on this. And they come home and they've been deflated. So I often say to a client, recognize who you spend your time with, who influences you, because outside does still influence us. Unless you're completely, which is great, keep building up your own accountability. Someone says something, like for instance, a lady just right now that I know on Instagram, I was posting something, somebody wrote a terrible comment. She posted a nice picture of her on the beach. It was on the beach. And somebody wrote, "You're fat." And I wish there was a way that I could write on there and say, like, "You're a prick. Like, how dare you?" But it's just awful. And she wrote a really nice comment. And she wrote, "Do you know what? I'm really happy with the person I am. And if you only see the outside, then you're just superficial." And she said it in a nice way. I'm sure she would have liked to have given this person a little bit more, but she's took the higher ground. But there are people out there who want to bring us down. It's a sad reality. And I think so often, and it really breaks my heart, because I'm working with a person and they get deflated by someone around them who doesn't share their values. And so what I say to a person often is, number one, recognize these people. Now, if you can, two groups, the supporters, and they're made up of what I call the cheerleaders and the acceptors. Now, the cheerleaders, they're the people at Phuket Cleanse with you. They're the people who are here right now. They're the people who are like, yeah, good on you. You share something, you say, hey, I just did a marathon. They're like, oh my God, that is so awesome. Well done. I've done this. I achieved this. I'm doing this right now. I'm cooking for myself. I've learned all these recipes. They're like, oh, wow, that's so great. Share them with me. I'm really excited. They're on the journey with you. They're the sort of, in terms of the people interested in this group, like self-growth and development. Cheerleaders. If you can have a couple of them around you, fantastic. Especially when you're having, and we all have bad days. You can get on the device and say, hey, can we have a chat? And this is one of the things that is really important right now. If you feel like isolation, and it leads to some things like emotional eating, you feel isolated and food becomes this comfort, then it is definitely trying to get on and say, look, maybe having a conversation with someone. Maybe it's a friend that I've met or a coach or whatever, just to have a conversation with a person to help me just move on and get back going towards the person that I want to be, because we all have bad days. So if you can have some cheerleaders in your group, just one or two, if you have more, fantastic. But this is what I love, like this sort of environment. And then you have the acceptors. And the acceptors, they're the people who don't go to Phuket Cleanse. But do you know what? They still accept you. And when you tell them, hey, I'm going to Phuket Cleanse, they're like, they might find out, what's that? And they're like, oh, wow, good on you. Not for me. They have their life. They know what's important to them, but they accept you for who you are. They're not judging you. And they can be great people to share things with. So if you can have some supporters to cheer you on and accept you for who you are, and you have a list, the longer the list, then awesome, great. But just a couple of people that when you're having a hard time and if you remember that away and towards, you're moving away from the person that you want to do. You're doing actions that are hooking you like in the wrong direction, that you can say, do you know, I've got to get on the phone, or I've got to have a conversation with this person, just because it just makes me feel better and it helps me get back online. This, you would not believe the amount of people who have had so many structures in place, and it was a person or a situation, something that threw them off. And that's why I'm big on this. Then we have what I call, so if it's like a game, a sport, we've got the supporters and obviously we've got the opposition. And the opposition for me are made up of the fake and the mean. So the fake is, oh, I'm off to Phuket cleanse. I'm like, oh, all right, what's that? And you're like, oh, I'm doing this. We're going to be eating these clean foods. We're going to be exercising. And they might say, oh, okay, you're going to wait this long, and how much is it costing? And all right. And you know that they're just, they're not thinking the best of it. They might be smiling and all the rest, but they're behind your back. They're not with you. And so I am a big fan of kind of putting a wall in front of those people and not sharing the person that I want to be, because I don't want to give them the opportunity to stick a little knife or something like that in there. And then we got the mean. The mean was the guy who said to my friend, hey, you're fat. And those people there, that's the obvious one. Get them out as far as you can. Now, if they're very close to you, if they're a partner, it's a tough conversation then. It's saying, this isn't working for me. So if you can be clear about these people, and like I said, we all have bad days. We all are, like, especially in times like this, it can only take a couple of little things to just knock us off, where suddenly it might have been financial, or, I mean, I have so many friends, and I have a friend who runs a kindergarten, or a guy who runs a kindergarten down here. And it's heartbreaking. He showed a picture of all his bills. He can't have clients. He built a business, and he's got a daughter. She's half-time, but he has no support here, no assistance. He runs a business. Doesn't have, in terms of the savings and all that. And it's just like, oh, that's really tough. So anything like it, sometimes we can be closer than we think. And that's where, if you can, like I said, have that network, and be, as soon as you feel you're going away, that you can draw on that. So they're the five parts there again. And in terms of, just, like I said, if I just do it, we'll go this way, wrong way. Going through and asking yourself the question again, who's the person I want to be? What do I stand for? Looking at the challenges that you're facing and being honest with them. The conversation that I had with Martin too, he was really, I really appreciated that the level that he talked about acceptance, about accepting what's going on at the moment too, whether it's even if it's he talked about his experience. Obviously it takes him 3 days when he gets news in terms of his growth or like what's going on, and accepting and sitting in there, but knowing, hey, all right, this will pass. I'm just got to keep working on this aspect. So looking at the challenges, and if they're people or if they're situations, how can I rearrange that? Looking at the setup to know, hey, putting in a habit, I'm going to have those reminders. I need those triggers. Looking at rewards and punishments, looking at the emotion that when you're doing stuff, give yourself that pat on the back, give yourself that little, the move that just gets your energy going, to acknowledge yourself. And then looking at those who are around you to say, okay, who do I want to share something with that can help me? And who do I just stay the poker face, not sharing? So I'm going to move on to some of the, in terms of, I wanted to share some things about supplements and talk about the gut also. But did you guys have any questions on that part there in terms of habits? I don't know if I see anything. All right. If not, we'll keep driving on. I'm just going to grab a little drink. Okay. Oh, cool. Let me wait. Oh, where to go? Where to go? There it is. Chat. Yeah, Michelle. Yeah, no, he's amazing, and I hope we can have him out here again soon when all these lockdowns stop. So yeah, it's such a brilliant guy. So let me talk a little bit about what I did in terms of for the immune system, and I'll include my thoughts on gut health as part of it. So some of the strategies. I'll just give a context. So I've already spoken. I have 2 young children here. I also, my mother lives with us. She is nearly 80. She's in the risk category according to an age perspective. I don't think she's in the risk category because of how fit she is. So for me, when I look at the studies, Yes, age was a factor for sure, but so were a lot of other things. One, having a pre-existing illness. So everybody, in terms of hospitalization, most of their issues were metabolic issues they were related to. So obesity, high blood pressure, they were big parts of it. And what we're seeing in terms of some of the studies, and so I'll dive in with, like I said, supplements and gut health and kind of put it together. Some of the things that I did was I was really big on ensuring, hey, why aren't you working? I've lost you. Okay, let's try this. My screen just stopped. There we go. Okay, just a first little quote. A vitamin is a substance that makes you ill if you don't eat it. Now, don't eat it, meaning especially if we can get it from our food. That's the first part. So, but sometimes, and I'll share what we've done here and with my mum, with my children, with myself, my wife, to see that, yeah, we're protecting ourselves the strongest. I disagree. I made a post. There was a post from the Canadian dietitians who said, you cannot boost your immune system. There's nothing you can do. There's no food or supplement. And I wrote my thing to say, I disagree with that. And we have enough studies to show that we can. And to boost, I had to define, because I think they got lost with the definition, meaning going supercharge. To boost just means raising it, getting us prepared, being ready. If we think about a military, I'm getting my troops ready for war if a war was there. That's what I'm thinking. I'm just like, okay, the body, immune system, I just want it ready. I don't want it hyper. I don't want my immune system going crazy, but I want them ready if something is coming on to deal with things. So one of the biggest studies coming out was that at least half the people, so if you look at that, show that like half the people had low vitamin D, and by having adequate levels, you're preventing in terms of the possibility of complications with it. So what needs to be clear is whether we catch it or not is irrelevant. So I may have had it already. You may have had it already. The question is, are we going to be symptomatic or asymptomatic? Are we going to be affected? Are we going to be hospitalized? So we're looking at the people who are hospitalized, having complications from this virus. And vitamin D is an absolute clear no-brainer in my opinion, which gets me my blood. I try to always understand both arguments. I try to be open to why things are recommended, but I still struggle with knowing this information and how critical vitamin D is, that like even here, the beaches, or people like stuck in apartments and not able to leave and not able to get fresh air and sunshine. So if you were affected, a lot of the countries now, as we see, lockdown is people are able to move. I get the reason why, but if you can get some sunshine daily, it is an absolute priority, just as priority as eating your greens or getting your sleep, doing all those things, getting vitamin D. And I know Mel and I have been talking about this since forever. It's just so critical. Now, if you are in a place that, like we've got rainy season in and the clouds take away a lot of the vitamin D. And if you want to use an app, there's an app called D-Minder, and you can download D-Minder. Used to be D-Minder Pro, but you could download D-Minder and yep, that's it. Oh, well done, Fiona. Yep. And that can tell you how much vitamin D you're getting based on your location. You'll put in your skin complexion and then the time that you're spending out in the sun. But to be clear, the middle of the day is the best time to get the vitamin D. Now, we don't want to get sunburned. And so what the D-Minder Pro also has, like an alarm to say, hey, watch out, you're getting too much. If you can get your vitamin D tested, if you are able to, it is one of the best insurance policies. So if you can get it tested to see where you are, I personally, so the minimums in the US scale, the minimum is 30. For me, a minimum is like right now 50. I really like it over 50 to 80. In Australia, keeping it over like, or international scale, Europe, then getting it over 100, 100 to at least 150. So really important, if you have access to getting it tested, please get it tested. If you're not getting that much sunshine, yes, I recommend to, yeah, and in terms of the windows, no, yeah, that will cut. Thanks, Stan. Thanks for going that. You're on the looking after it. Good job. You need that direct. The windows will stop in terms of the vitamin D getting in. You also have to watch out. Say, for instance, you go out and you get some sun, and then you go have a shower and you get the soap and you put it on, like you clean, you basically have a shower afterwards with soap. You're going to take some of that potential vitamin D away. So you should be getting some sun, and then as many areas of the body as possible. In the middle of the day is the strongest, not getting sunburnt, and then leave it there for at least a couple of hours. If you're going to take vitamin D as a supplement, which still is very valid, it's not as good, but just like a lot of things, it can be helpful. You should also take it with vitamin K2 and magnesium for absorption. Now, magnesium at the moment is also, I didn't put it in the supplements, but if you are really struggling in any way in terms, let's just call it stressed, you feel threatened in some way, magnesium gets used a lot. It's actually the relaxant. So it's part of the muscle that relaxes. And if you're tensing, if you feel, even if you're not holding yourself, you're using a lot of magnesium. So having extra magnesium can be helpful. And how do you know how much? Oftentimes, like I'll get people who are stressed to take maybe 1 gram a day. But if you take too much, it's a water-soluble vitamin, which means you take too much, like vitamin C, you get diarrhea. And actually what we do with vitamin C oftentimes is a challenge test to keep loading a person. So what I did with my mum was I loaded her up with vitamin C, kept taking it throughout the morning to see what her tolerance level was, and then I held her at that level. So you can do that with magnesium too. Next one. So vitamin C is an absolute no-brainer. Come on. There we go. Not working. Stuck. All right. 2 other ones, vitamin C and zinc. Most people actually have known about, they'll often, oh, I got a cold, I got the flu, and they put vitamin C and zinc often together as a lozenge or something like that. Vitamin C has antioxidant properties, and one of the problems of this virus, it creates what's called a cytokine storm, and it's a lot of, let's say, inflammation and oxidation, fire and rust. Fire burning down the house, rust actually affecting the processes of the body. And vitamin C helps take down these free radicals that are causing these oxidation issues that are creating damage in the body, because that's what's happening. The immune system's kicking in, the more the damage, so your immune system starts fighting itself, and vitamin C can help calm everything down, mop it up. In terms of amounts for vitamin C, as I said, I'm a big fan of its natural forms first. So if you can always try to choose food, meaning colored vegetables. The problem with the fruit, like oranges nowadays, the vitamin C content for most of them has really gone down. I use some supplements. I have a thing called moringa. There's some Indian gooseberry. So I use different herbs, and but also a lot of colored vegetables like red peppers, bell peppers, and in terms of colors, tomatoes, and then yes, some citrus, so berries and things like that. So if you can get in terms of vitamin C, if you feel like you're not getting enough, and this is where I just bump things up, you can get the ascorbic acid, but see that it has on the back with bioflavonoids. It just means that the body uses it in a better form, not just pure ascorbic acid. So that could be an extra. And you might add, a lot of people are talking about 1 to 3 grams. As I said, I often load it up, and then if you get diarrhea, you can bring it down. Zinc, the classic, in the study that I've put up here, they were talking about 30 milligrams a day. Now you have to watch out with zinc. It's often sold in a multi as zinc oxide. And zinc oxide is what you put in your nose. It's a cheap form. You want a zinc, and you want to see when you read zinc something, it might be picolinate or chelate, gluconate. You want to see it says ATE on the end. Really important. That means that it's an active, that is absorbable form. And so I recommend, like this is what we've been doing. I've been taking 30 milligrams a day, and then I give my kids, for instance, just a little bit like here and there. So 10 milligrams, just to see their levels are strong. We know kids are like, it hasn't been like, they've been the resilient ones for just like a lot of things they get through. But for me, just having zinc in there, a bit of extra zinc can be helpful. Let's talk about in terms of gut function. Most of you know, or probably heard, that your immune system sits in your gut. It's your good bacteria. These are the guys who are protecting you from the infections. They are especially bacterial infections or fungal infections, but a viral infection too, because they are able to help bring down the storm, this cytokine storm. And the problem is when, and I've seen a lot of clients, I think it's just the way, because I had a gut problem. I see a lot of people with gut issues. And what that does, when I look at their lab tests, somebody put in a question. When I see their lab tests, often when I compare people with long-term issues for, thanks Eva, no worries, I think they're gonna make they'll release the video of that. But when I see a client who's had long-term chronic gut issues, it often shows up in their immune system. So meaning looking at their white blood cell count, and like their white blood cell, their army might be down. And so what I often recommend, first of all, is trying to ask ourselves, and we use what's called the 5 R's for gut health. The first R is remove or reduce. So I talked about that today. And you might say, okay, what really hurts the gut? Well, actually, this is one of the toughest ones, stress. Stress really hurts the gut for one. So how can it's not the stress that kills us, it's our reaction to it. How can I work on managing it? How can I have the time for myself? How can I work with this and able to let things go? How do I put things into priority? So stress is a big one. But then if we look around, so mindset, lifestyle, lack of sleep is a big problem for the gut. We see even some studies, people, night shift workers, people crossing time zones, they're not able to repair. Sleep is when we repair. So if you can really optimize and look after that. Movement, we need some movement. We've got to watch out for maybe a small percentage of people overdoing it, but we need to get blood flow. Like a water, like if the water, like a little pond, if it's lost its water coming through, then basically it gets stagnant. So we need blood flow. And one of the markers I look at is called an ESR, which is how sticky your blood is. And that shows more inflammatory and more issues to the immune system too. And dietary wise, the more processed, the more sugar. We know sugar feeds the bad guys. Fiber feeds the good guys. I'm about to do a talk soon on gut health with some Indian doctors. And the talk that I'm giving is on prebiotics, fibrous vegetables, certain types of fiber, and probiotics. And like for today, I eat sauerkraut, I have tempeh, fermented foods are a massive part of my diet. They're so important for the gut. So we remove, we reduce, then we look at in terms of reintegrating foods, a clean diet, as many of the habits in there, I'll kind of go over this. We talk about in terms of the gut, I just talked about the probiotics. If you have a gut issue, especially at this time, because we know the immune system, then is it helpful to take a probiotic supplement? For some people, perhaps. If you're going to buy a probiotic supplement, see that there's at least 10 strains in that, meaning the more different varieties, the more it protects and supports the immune system. And then we want to just basically stand back and look as an overview. So repairing certain things and seeing that you're getting some sun. Oh, someone had a question?
Sorry, we haven't put in. Hi, Craig, this is Jagan.
Hi, Jagan. Let me,
Wie geht's dir?
Ah, good, danke.
Yeah.
Sehr beschäftigt. How are you?
Good, thanks. This is Regine, my wife.
Hello, how are you? Do you have a question for me?
No, it was a mistake. We should have put on mute.
You just jumped on. That's cool. I thought, oh, someone's got a question on the gut. No worries. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Throw the questions into there.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Right.
A pleasure. Thanks for joining. So for me, when it comes to the gut, I want to be asking myself what's hurting it, and then if I can reduce and even eliminate as many of those things as possible. And some of those things I'm going to have to manage. Like I said, stress is a big one. Often when I'm looking at a person, working with a person with a gut issue, it's often the emotional component. I speak from my own case that I chose different things that cause stress, but also the moving to a new country and working 2 jobs. And that was one of the reasons that my gut kind of was not supported. So if you can look at the overview and put things in perspective, and then it is just, like I said, trying to clean eating, good fiber, feed the good guys, keep the sugar out as much as possible. Great to see you guys. And then adding in natural. So I'm a big fan of using food in terms of for the probiotics. It's a balance there. And if you get, for most people, if we're doing that, we're balancing sugar levels, which is, as I said, critical. So one of the biggest risk factors for people getting this virus seems to be age and blood sugar regulation. So when you have poor blood sugar regulation, meaning you're pre-diabetic or you have high blood pressure or you have any of those things, then you increase your chances. And partly because we know the gut is being affected, the immune system is being affected. And most of the people who are not at their ideal weight, they're also having, like I said, the low vitamin D. So if you can do those parts, the fear, hopefully, like a person was to say to me, Craig, how much do you fear the virus? We're having a mother who lives with you, who's nearly 80, having 2 young children, and being there and all this, and living in terms of Phuket, not very much. What do I fear the most? I fear for most people the mental aspect. I fear what's happening with work, with relationships, so the financial stuff. That's the greatest fear, and that's why I'm saying to people, let's see if we can get as much, like, cover your bases, get your immune system strong as possible, get your vitamin D, take your zinc, vitamin C, eat as clean as possible, look after your gut, have balanced blood sugar, do everything you can, but then look at that bullseye again. Look at those aspects, and also from a mental perspective. That's where the big work is for me. And at most times, if I have a client who's overweight, a lot of the time it's like, what are the habits? And that's why I wanted to share with you the process that I'll do with a client to work on the habits. Be focused on who's the person that I want to be in this environment. Who do I want to be when this shifts out? And if you can hold on to that part and be very clear, and every time you drift away, having a reminder, no, that's the person that I want to be. I've got to bring these actions back into it. Then it becomes easier. For me, it's like, okay, what's my purpose? My purpose is to support as many people as possible. Keep it clear. Look after my family. Support people. Anything that distracts me, I've got to, like I said, that Instagram and that, I've got to keep saying, Craig, what are you doing? What are you doing? A little bit okay. Don't be too hard on yourself, but watch out, I get sucked into it. You guys got any questions?
I missed first 1 or 2 minutes. So it's how to protect in COVID environment.
Yeah, we'll Stanton will put up a replay soon.
Yeah, Jack, and we started over an hour ago. You're over an hour late. Good gracious.
I was waiting for Stanton.
I was following IST, Indian Standard Time, brother.
That's right.
Classic.
You haven't been in Germany long enough. You got too much of those Indian genetics still in you.
Punktly, Kate.
My love, let me introduce my lovely wife on a Mother's Day, Regine.
Hello, man. How are you, beautiful? Good to see you.
Guys.
I'm doing good, thank you.
Awesome. Have you guys got any questions?
We missed 2-3 minutes, I believe, right?
Sorry, say it again.
You see, seriously, are we 1 hour behind?
Yeah, we started at 3 Thailand time, so a little over an hour ago.
Oh,
But don't
sorry,
worry.
I didn't realize the time changed, winter time. Oh, okay.
I recorded. I'll send it to you. Don't worry.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. That would be nice. Thank you very
All
much.
right, guys. I just want, so it's been awesome. Unless anybody's got any questions, and they can also send me a message. I'll put in my website. And if anyone's interested in some support, I'll do a little plug for myself now. So how I've been keeping myself busy over this time is, especially when we realized, Stanton and I, and obviously people out in Phuket, we realized one day to the next, there goes your business model just changed. And you go, oh, okay. And I said, from the part as a provider, as a dad, and looking after my, it was like, oh, okay. And one of the things that I did was, how can I be proactive? How can I take what I have? And so one of the things that I've done is created a lot of courses, a membership site, and I'm doing talks regularly and getting people, and I know Phuket Cleanse, so I recommend getting onto that, but for yourself also to say, okay, what am I doing? How am I using this time? So I'll also say, if anyone's interested in more support, you can come to my website. I've got a deal on there at the moment. If anyone's ever done a session, and it's a one-to-one coaching plus a membership site that I've built. So Craig Burton Coaching, come and check that out. And I'll also be posting on Instagram and Facebook some of the talks. Like I said, I had such an inspiring talk with Martin just last week. I'm doing a conference actually with some Indian doctors. There you go. In gut health. It is in May, and I'll be talking about prebiotics and probiotics with some amazing, I think there's 6 doctors, and I've been fortunate to be invited. And so a lot of things. So if, in terms of people, keeping yourself moving towards who's the person you want to be, what are you doing to keep this? Because there's nothing worse right now than, for me, staying like stagnant and being proactive, basically. Positive and proactive. If we can keep doing that, keep moving through, our immune system, like I said, it will get through it.
So Craig, I had a question. Did you see that?
Oh, I didn't see. Deborah, what was your question?
Just you said that you have a mother who is 80, and you said that she's very fit. My question to you is, I'm having trouble with the exercise that I'm doing every single day, quite, 8-hour walk, 60K bike rides, etc., etc. Wow. I can't keep my density. How do I, and I don't know, I'm eating lots of protein. I've got a very healthy diet, like you say. I get 8 hours of sleep every night, but I'm just fading away.
The biggest thing, Deborah, and I see it, so when I say my mum's fit, you're super fit. Like my mum walks and she's in the garden, and I can see her right now. She's out in the garden doing stuff. Fitness, sorry?
She's 80, I'm only 64.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying she's, in terms of the movement, like keeping our body moving and all this, and in terms of 60, like doing all the bikes right and all that, awesome. But the key is hormones. What you need to do is you need to get your hormones checked, because bone density is directly related, especially for females.
The bone, my bones are strong. It's the muscles that are losing. I'm so tiny.
Sorry, I didn't hear you correctly, Deborah. I thought you said my bone density has been decreasing.
Muscles.
Are your muscles? So in terms of sarcopenia, we call it. So in terms of that part, one of the questions that I'd ask is, first, protein consumption, how much are you having? And if you're not sure, if you had never recorded it, what I would do, I'll put it in the chat box, is record for a day or 2 or 3 into this chronometer. Some of you may have heard of MyFitnessPal. I'm not the biggest fan because it's too easy to make mistakes. Chronometer uses government approved sites. And you might be surprised, Deborah, that you're not consuming as much protein as you'd like. And I know Mel is also very big when you hear Mel's talks about protein. And oftentimes the person goes, really? Like people go to Chris does a great talk on protein too. We should, most of the times for me, it's at least like if a person's losing muscle, 1.5 grams per kilogram. So if you want it as a minimum, you want it in its best forms. It might plant, animal, but you want digestible. You want to see your gut is taking it. But that's often the case. I actually did a talk last year to the American Anti-Aging. We have a chapter here, American Anti-Aging Council. And I did a talk on whey protein. Now, a lot of the whey on the market's crap, but it was studies on using very high quality whey for people over the age of 50 who are starting to suffer from sarcopenia. And so there were some really good studies to show something like whey protein. Now, it might not be whey, it might also be collagen protein. Using that, it might be the vegan proteins, hemp protein, brown rice, but using protein, like playing with that. And that can be really, really helpful because like I said, a lot of people that I see, when I sit down and design a plan and we go through, they go, oh, wow, that's a bit of protein. And oftentimes I'm like, yeah, that's one of the reasons why you've been losing muscle. You've been hungry all the time, or you've been gaining body fat is because your ratios have been out. And it might even be like, I rarely go over 30% of the diet in protein, but most people are actually, when I see them and they've got issues, they might only be having 15% of their diet. So have a go with the chronometer. If you want to have more of a chat or even do something like that, please send me a message. But that's the thing when it comes especially with muscles. When it comes to bones, anyone who's been hormones play a role. Muscles so hormones play a role in muscle mass. Testosterone, for instance. Females need an adequate amount of testosterone. And very rarely do females get tested for testosterone. Like, oh, that's a male hormone. What do I need testosterone for? And it's like, you need it. Like, we need more, but you still need it for muscle mass, bone density, obviously, and then all the other parts, sexual function, libido, but energy. Testosterone is critical, same as estrogen. Estrogen actually will help in terms of that, but testosterone, I would definitely be getting tested. And if you find it's right on the bottom end, then it's a question of saying, okay, how could I optimize that? And some clients I have, they explore the idea of bioidenticals. I know Mel sometimes does talks on bioidenticals and things like that. But there are also natural ways to boost it too. Getting enough zinc, for instance, zinc is critical to testosterone, not just the immune system, but to making hormones. So have a look. Yeah, hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you.
That part you addressed the nutrition and hormones, but what about stimulating the muscle so that in the sense, I don't know, to hit the iron or pump the muscles so that.
Yeah, it's a good point. You want to, I mean, exercise. So when you go through the foundations, mindset, having a lot of stress is a problem for muscle mass, like because cortisol will actually it's a catabolic hormone that will break things down. So we go mindset, then we go lifestyle. Not getting enough sleep will cause atrophy. What happens is when we don't get enough sleep and we're stressed, instead of our body using fat for fuel, we use muscle for fuel. So people get skinny fat. They get a belly and they lose that because their stress levels and their lack of sleep. So that's mindset, lifestyle, nutrition and movement. Movement, obviously strength training is right? And it could be, let's call it resistance training. Resistance where you actually stimulate the muscle. And it could be body weight resistance. Some people yoga, that's resistance. It could be bands, it could be weights, but that's critical. If you don't use it, you lose it. And that's why we know when a person lies in a hospital bed for 2 weeks, they suddenly lose all their muscle mass because like the blood goes, the muscles go, you're not working me. And then nutrition wise, if we get to that box there for muscle mass, we need enough iron for blood flow. We've got to make in terms of iron is critical. A person with anemia, which is a low iron or a B vitamin like B12, that will not bring the oxygen to the body and actually to be metabolically working. So that can be a problem for muscle mass. But all the nutrients, yes, zinc is critical. Pretty much like magnesium is critical. Like I said, magnesium is a part of the muscle pump. And you use, when you're doing a lot of, especially cardiovascular endurance activities, you use a lot more magnesium. And so that's where it's like, see that you've got adequate levels, but having a full spectrum of vitamins and minerals, which means as wide-ranging whole foods diet as possible. And then if you need to, because you've got extra stresses, maybe looking at supplementing, might be a greens powder, it might be a natural multivitamin, it may be something else. Like I said, in times like this, I'm taking a bit extra zinc, I'm taking a bit extra vitamin C. You know, I eat a pretty clean diet just because I want things to be high. So always look at the big picture, mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, movement, and see if you can, fill in any gaps.
Deborah, a couple of things that I've been doing that's quite different to my normal life, because I'm usually quite a lot of cardiovascular and a little bit of yoga, but is Ashtanga. I've just been making that part of my daily morning practice, and just starting with that. And what's nice about it is that you can have the same routine, so you don't have to think it through so much. But that's something that's nice to do. And the other thing I've been doing is a 30-day plank app challenge. And you can start at a like beginner level, intermediate, or advanced level. But there's some free apps in the App Store that you can just download and just follow them. But they're kind of like some easy things to sort of put in. But I think it's that, I've just made Ashtanga as part of my daily routine, which has just helped me with work and things like that.
I think it's great, Jane. It reminds me, I was reading a study just recently on comfort eating, and what they said was one of the antidotes to comfort eating was the variety. And if I think about it with exercise, it's like you're adding variety in there. And they found that when a person who had especially more boredom eating and things like that, if they started looking at recipes and making new dishes, it actually really helped them. And it was a really interesting study. I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. And then we can take that again in other areas. We could take it with movement to say, do you know what? This month I'm going to do a plank challenge. I haven't been doing those sort of things. I'm going to do a push-up challenge. So what I did was I created all these habits, and I had like a push-up challenge, like one extra push-up a day, or a squat challenge, one extra squat, or walking a little bit further, or certain things. And you just, again, asking yourself, okay, does that align with me? Is it realistic? Where do I put it in? Where am I going to lock this in? Like maybe it's breaking up through the day, but actually like having those triggers in there. But the actual act of a bit of variety, and it's fantastic. We need that. And so there are so many apps out there that I think are really helpful in terms of, trying different stuff and a bit of variety. I see there's questions. So Jane, you asked the question about collagen.
Yeah, I guess I'm more, I've got hypermobility. It's not extreme, but it's just a little bit. But also I'm a little bit curious as to, being in my 40s, as to the view on the impact of anti-aging as well. I'm just curious. It's something I've played with before, and then I've stopped doing. But is taking a collagen powder a necessity? Well, we can make collagen ourselves. We actually make it from vitamin C. So a person who's vegetarian and vegan can say, well, yeah, just getting adequate levels of vitamin C. Absolutely. And I'm a big fan of getting adequate levels of vitamin C, especially from food. But taking an extra collagen, I've found really effective for a lot of people, especially with digestion issues. I've found that's been a backbone. And we unfortunately, yet we don't have enough studies on like we were just using the collagen, because I try to do my research and see there's certain things. So obviously the people who make the collagen, of course they're going to say it's the greatest thing ever. That's just obvious. But anecdotally, I can say that I found in the clients that I've worked with, when I've been able to put collagen in, I feel like that's given us an extra 10% or even 5%. Mm-hmm.
And partly if I understand why, because people with gut issues have a problem breaking down foods, especially if we talk about animal products and meat, they have a problem breaking that down. And so here we've got a form of collagen from the joints and everything from the animal already broken down that the gut goes, whew, you've done the work for me. I can take it in now and I can use those amino acids. So I have collagen. I use it every day because I was born with a gut that's not as strong, and I've put it through some things. So it's my, let's just call it preventive measures. And the thing about collagen is, connecting with Fiona's question about good quality, what am I looking for from an external protein source? Number one, I want it super clean. And unfortunately, if you get most of the protein powders whey on the general store, they're garbage. They're produced with an acidity method, so it's produced from cheese production. Also, I should say the byproduct of cheese production. It was they used to throw out the whey. See, obviously everyone knows the curds and whey. What is it, Little Miss Muffet?
Yeah.
Was one of the original, whey was one of the original health tonics for the whole Phuket cleanse included. Any health retreat, its origins actually come, this is one of the things I talk about, come from whey. Because in Switzerland, a little town that used to have the whey used to give sick people, and people flocked to this little village to have their whey, and they put together a retreat, and that grew through Europe, these retreats. So whey was one of the biggest things. Now, it was in its natural form. The cows were grass-fed. They were natural. They weren't pumped with antibiotics and growth hormones and given crap to eat. And so whey is, for my mind, unless you've got a problem with dairy, which some people do, it can be a beneficial thing. You just need to see it's grass-fed. It's what's called undenatured, meaning it hasn't been really high heat treated. They use the ceramic filters to separate it. There's no, except for stevia or maybe lohan or something, it's not sweetened with the artificial stuff or the crap. And it's I prefer them with as least other ingredients as possible. It says 100% whey protein. I prefer it from a concentrate because actually when they isolate it, so you can buy isolates and concentrates, they take away some good fats and good binders. So that's whey, clean as possible, undenatured. When it comes to the vegan ones, they're a bit safer because most of the vegan products, they're like, we're not going to add all this crap to it because people are coming to use it. So if you find hemp protein or brown rice protein, generally they're clean. The problem with the vegan ones for me is their taste. Some even say like, it's hard to knock down some of those. So you have to add massive amounts of fruit. And if some people are trying to keep sugar levels in a certain range, it can be a bit much. But you can make combinations. You can find out what a good formula. I know Phuket Cleanse does different ones with brown rice, with pea protein, just to find the combination. And when it comes to collagen, it'll be 100% hydrolyzed collagen from grass-fed animals. Now, you can get it from beef is the classic, but fish collagen is also available for anyone who doesn't eat or is maybe more pescatarian orientated. The beef one is the biggest one. If it's a fish one, it should be tested for, all of them should be tested for mercury. They should be testing for spores. You can see that on the label. There's a company, Green Pastures, that I get my collagen. There's one called Zimt. If you use iHerb, but unfortunately, if you're outside of America, iHerb at the moment takes forever. So just looking at your local one, but just see that it's 100% collagen, hydrolyzed, clean. Cool. Any other questions, guys? All right. So if anyone loves some support, come and visit my site or send me a message. I'd love to help anyone. And it's great. Thank you so much for everyone coming on the call. If you have any other questions, you can message me or you can send it across to Stanton, who will forward it on to me.